I am a teenager from Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm really passionate about mental health and raising conversations about that, which is why I joined Kaiya as a founding fellow. I'm also part of Samaritans, which is a local suicide helpline in Boston, where I volunteer and help out. And I'm really excited to be talking with Sini today about his book and his ideas about technology and mental health. So, Sini, would you like to tell us a little bit about your book and what inspired you to write?
So I started writing the book in April 2020. Yeah, April 2020. So about a year and a half ago. The book is called Untethered, and it's about how to overcome distraction and create healthy digital habits. We have developed a relationship with our devices that is kind of codependent, or, well, at least dependent from our side.
Just like swiping through your phone without really any purpose. I know like sometimes when I'm like doing homework, for example, and I like am like bored or like I am like stuck on something, I'll just like pick up my phone and like swipe through the home screen, and I'll like scroll through like the apps. When like there's not really any like purpose.
Over the past couple of years, there are a couple of studies that actually came out saying that when our phone is within of our line of sight, we are actually reducing our IQ because we're so distracted that we're actually having less IQ available to us to work on the task that we're working on.
You had found yourself like getting hooked into like gaming even after you had not like touched a game for like 8 years. What would you say is like the role of like your friends or like your peers in holding you accountable in times like that?
In my book, I talk about the idea of their tactics and their strategies. They're these like short-term solutions that you can find a lot of Medium posts on, and then they're long-term strategies that actually work in overcoming distraction. And for example, one tactic that I use every day is like, this is my charging cord. It's like, it's really, really short because when my phone is charging, I don't actually want access to it. It's other people use grayscale modes, or other people have different ways of like organizing their home screens. And I talk about that in my book as well. But I actually think the best long-term strategy for overcoming distractions is accountability with other people. And I would even push it further by saying, if we refocus away from ourselves to helping others overcome their distraction, we'll be more successful together. And the reason why I believe that is, so there's some statistics that make it quite obvious that we're really, really great at taking care of each other, but quite bad at taking care of ourselves. A doctor prescribes us medication. Only 2 in 3 people buy that medication for themselves and give it to themselves. But when we get prescribed medication for our pets, 90% of pet owners give their pets the prescribed medication. So it means we're really, really good when it comes to taking care of others, but we're kind of bad when it comes to taking care of ourselves. And refocusing away from ourselves is powerful, because we have proven over and over again that when we focus too much on ourselves, we're actually worse off than when we focus on helping others. And when we have friends who do the same for us, we are actually much more likely to succeed.
What would you say is the importance of mindset and how we think about technology as we like think about changing our relationship to ourselves and the role of technology in our lives?
The most important mindset change starts with the idea that our smartphone is not actually a tool, right? And that's an idea that's out there because most of our lives we've been told, well, just use your smartphone as a tool. You're not hooked to other tools. Why are you hooked to your smartphone? But I actually think our smartphone is already our very first relationship with a tech device. How else would we be carrying it around for 14 hours per day and prioritizing it even over people? If we accept that it's just a new type of relationship, then we can tap into the realm of relationship tools. And those look very different. And as you mentioned, those like singular tech solutions, suddenly we're talking about solutions that are very human-centric, right? And if you were, for example, if you had a better relationship with your parents and you go to therapy for it, I can tell you for sure your therapist will not advise you to get rid of your parents or to change them from colorful people into grayscale mode, right? Yeah. That's not what they will advise. They will talk to you about your own problems in life and what triggers you might have. And so there's a very not self-centric, but a self-improvement approach to solving a problem that seems technology related. And similar in my book, I focused very much on the idea of upgrading our own mind and upgrading ourselves before we change the settings of our phone.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm very curious what you think is that number one mindset change.
Well, I do have to say I've never thought of like smartphones as like a relationship.
Mm.
You know, I have to say I've always thought of it like as a tool or like something to assist me more. But like what you're saying definitely makes a lot of sense. I think mindset is important in how we like view technology, which is going to directly affect how we like treat it and how it plays a role in our lives.
When I feel the need to use my phone, I'm asking myself, how would I interact with my sister, right? Would I, for example, if my phone is charging, to me, it's the equivalent of my sister napping or my sister sleeping. And if my phone is charging, would I wake my sister up and be like, hey, what's the weather in Austria right now? Right? Would I ask her these stupid, tiny little questions that are like, that I just feel needy to ask? I probably wouldn't, except if I wanted to be annoying with her. And sometimes that happens. I just want to annoy her, right? But most of the time, I would say that's a bad thing to do. And so I'm trying to not do the same thing to my smartphone that I wouldn't do to my parents or my sister.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think thinking of that as like not necessarily just like a tool, but a relationship with like maybe somebody who, or just like somebody in your life, that'll definitely change how you like treat technology or like treat your phone.
Right.
In a lot of ways. Yeah. In Kaiya, we talked a little bit about boundaries and something called the window of tolerance in regards to mental health. And we also talked about like the importance of setting boundaries, especially when you're, you know, you have to be able to like evaluate how you're feeling and just think of the things that you can tolerate. What do you think is like the role of boundaries or like the importance of boundaries in our relationship with tech? In the past, I feel like because I have like considered technology as a tool, so it's never really been something that I've set like necessary boundaries with. I do think I've like kind of like set limits for myself, like even while I hadn't necessarily considered technology as a relationship. Like for example, I'll like set time limits on like apps or something, or I'll like turn on do not disturb at like a certain point in the day. Things like that. Like
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, even like when I hadn't considered technology as a relationship, I still had been like setting those boundaries because I saw like, you know, how much effect that it had on my life. What do you think the role of these corporations, tech companies, should play in changing our relationship with technology and mental health?
From my perspective, there is obviously a moral obligation, and then there is capitalism and the incentive structure that is behind capitalism. And really, really hard if we're just looking at the bottom line of these companies to prioritize mental health. Now, a lot of companies have started recognizing that if their customers aren't healthy, they won't be good customers in the long term, right? So the mindsets there are changing. Now, a company like Facebook, for example, they have a huge moral obligation to help us out, especially when they know how affected teens, for example, are when it comes to Instagram usage. Yeah. What's your thought on what's happening right now?
I mean, I think like the information that's coming out about like Instagram and its like effects on girls, young girls, teenage girls, you know, which is like the demographic that I am in. I think from my perspective, it's not really anything like new or like new information. It's more just like confirming, I guess, things that we kind of already were aware of. How like, you know, social media is harmful in a lot of ways to like teenage girls. I think
Yeah.
like the fact that like Facebook is aware of that is definitely like a problem.
I think, as you obviously know, policies take much longer to implement than the
Mhm.
effects that we're already feeling on our bodies, on our minds, on our well-being. And so my book is very focused on the idea that I think we can improve our life circumstances if we want to. And
Mhm.
what policies do is they can support us in that. But I also think I also think that we are responsible at the end of the day. And so my book is very focused on what we can do as individuals to help us and to help our community, independent of what is going to happen on the bigger picture, because honestly, we probably don't have that much influence on what decision will be made by these people, right?
Yeah.
There's actually one more thing that I wanted to share with you and actually get your thoughts on. There's a statistic that I'm highlighting, which is published by Canada's Centre for Addiction and Mental Health in Ontario. And they do this like every 2 years, they do this survey among teenagers where they ask them about mental health statistics. Do you have this experience of in days where you are increasing your screen time, you're spending more time on social media or whatever other apps you're using, are you feeling a direct effect on your mental health or your self-esteem?
I think like the periods where I like spend a lot of time with technology, um, it's very complicated, I feel like, depending on what I'm doing.
Mm,
But I also know that like being with like my family or like my friends is very different from like, being with my devices. And in a lot of ways, it's a lot better for me, especially like my well-being, and being able to have like that social connection. So I do think that like those days where I spend more time like on my devices, it does have an effect on me, like mentally, and like with my self-esteem. I think
yeah,
especially social media, if I spend more time on that,
sure.
definitely does have an effect, especially with like the things that people are posting. Um, those things definitely are affected negatively. I find when I spend more time
Yeah,
on my
yeah, that's
devices.
fascinating. Yeah,
Mhm.
because I also I also often notice that when I talk to teens, not everybody thinks that like the smartphone is an issue in their lives. But
Mhm.
when I read statistics, it becomes obvious. But on a personal level, it sometimes doesn't feel that way. So I was wondering if it felt that way to you, or if it's more something that you read about, but personally you don't actually think it affects you that much.
I think like reading about it and like hearing statistics like that definitely makes me more aware, and like
Mm,
it allows me to like think back and realize that, oh, this is what's happening and this is how I'm feeling like when I spend a lot of time on my devices. Um, but I like also feel that like when I'm like on my phone for a long time and I like get off, I don't directly feel like, oh, this is like caused me to like my self-esteem to go down a lot. Like I don't like
right.
necessarily like consciously will realize that. Um, but I think like hearing statistics and reading about these things definitely
Hmm.
makes me more aware of that. So
Yep, makes sense. Yep, cool. Yeah, what the other thing that I'm curious about is so you're obviously part of Kaiya, and
mhm.
uh, Kaiya is a huge help for a lot of teens. How is Kaiya helping you? How are you able to help other teens through Kaiya?
Mhm. Well, Kai definitely like helps with like allowing me to kind of like talk about my mental health, and learn more about how I can like support others or like support myself. Um, it's also like fully online, so like
Mm,
being able to connect with people, via technology, that is really helpful because it's something that I can talk about with people who are like all over like the country.
Hmm.
Um, I think just having that safe space, even if it's like virtual, is still really helpful. Um,
Totally.
and it's also like makes Kaiya possible to like a wider variety of people. So
Yeah, thank you so much, Amy. I really appreciate this conversation. These are way too rare, and I wish I had more of them. Yeah, when it comes to the book, you can get it on Amazon. It's called Untethered, and if you type in Untethered Sini, you'll find it super easily. Other than that, feel free to reach out to me. My website is asksini.com. So don't ask Siri, ask Sini. And yeah, that's it. I really, really, really appreciate it.